Hello and welcome to another episode of Make Mine Mayday, the show all about Spider-Girl and her world. I am Zach Joyner, the webmaster of Spidey-Dude.com, executive producer of the Spidey Dude Radio Network, and we're going into the end of the Spider-Verse. Kind of. It's a whole thing. Anyway, we will visually give thanks to our patrons over at patreon.com/Spidey Dude Network. You see the up on the screen our sensational tier, as well as our spectacular tier, friendly neighborhood tier, and Spidey Dude VIPs. You see them up on the screen. Thank you guys for your support over on Patreon. We really do appreciate it. Before we get into the bulk of the episode, we will mention to our audio listeners, give us that 5-star review. Let us know how we're doing on your favorite platforms. Leave us emails, or if it is given, will be read on future episodes. I also want to mention here off the top, there's going to be some references to visual aids and or live comments that we will highlight the appearances of Mayday and the issues. They are numerous. Just kidding. Anyway, I also want to mention that we do have the option for super chats if you're watching us live on YouTube, and we will highlight them as they come, but please be respectful in them. We always want that anyway. So thanks. Let's get on with the episode. And of course, I wouldn't be doing this show without Kelly McDaniel. Hello, Kelly.
Hi. I thought we talked about not using my last name for security purposes.
My bad.
No, I mean, it's been in 58 episodes now. Like, in general.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Hi. I'm good.
This is a bit of a bonkers ass story. Do we want to talk about it? Do we want to mention that Madam Web is still in theaters and still a thing for now?
You mean Crazy Taxi, the movie? Seriously, how did that taxi survive? And the fact that she stole it, she parked it at the airport to go to the Amazon.
And nobody
came back and picked it up.
And that must have been made of an armored tank, because that thing went through 2 or 3 buildings. Not to mention
and then hold on, because I know you didn't bring it up, and I tried to get it to being brought up on Crawl Space, but I could not record. This is the thing that took me out the most, and just, I guess, sort of a spoiler for anybody who hasn't watched Madam Web, but it's not such a big spoiler that I think, it's gonna
ruin the movie for you.
Ruin your, yeah. So there is a scene featuring Britney Spears' Toxic, as you know. And, they're talking about how it's just such a great hit and it's going to be the hit of the summer. Okay. That came off an album that came out December 2003. And if this is supposed to be Peter, Peter being born, depending on what version of Peter this is, it's either August or it's October, not December. So this song had not come out yet. It was not a single until January 2004. So again, had not come out yet. Was not on the airwaves. And that took me out the most because it kept getting played.
I know. They got the license for it and they were like, we're gonna milk this for all it's worth.
I just well, I mean, technically this was under her, so I think she's still under Sony BMG. But still, no. And I'm just no. You know what I mean? It took me out that badly.
Sorry, I got Waylon.
And no, Escanor. It did not make Morbius look tolerable. I would actually watch Madam Web probably again before I'd watch Morbius, but
there's also inherent Jared Leto bias for you.
It's not a bias when he's an actual a-hole.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Even Waylon wants to get in on the Madam Web discussion, as if you're watching live on YouTube.
Okay, in any case, at the end of the day, I think there's parts of the movie that are really good, could be okay, could be Morbius level okay, kind of silly, kind of funny. Not a good movie, but a decent movie. The issue ultimately at hand was straight up the post-production audio design that did not line up with the rest of the audio in the movie.
Yeah, there was some straight reuse of
That was
scenes and dubbing.
that
and,
was
yeah.
I literally cut corners where you can cut corners, but that's kind of one of those things where it's like you can't cut that corner. Like production is just not something you can like do that with. It is, whew, it's yeah, nope. This,
Oh, I mean,
like I said, there were good bones for this movie. It's terrible post-production execution, beyond just the fact that also it's Crazy Taxi the movie.
the most it's like what if the armor was what if the taxi was made of armor? I also love
what if the taxi was a spider? What if the taxi is the first spider totem?
It's Peter Parker 1.0.
Talk about Peter Parker. But anyway, I think that's enough of Madam Web.
Okay, so I did have to throw that out there since we talked about it last episode, and it's actually came out.
It is also. I mean, it was set in 2003, 2004 ish.
Around the time that some
Spider.
parts, yeah, the totem.
No, but just in general, Spider Girl in general.
Yeah,
a lot of people associate with 2003, 2004.
Yeah, that's true. So there's a lot of totem stuff too in that movie, and
well, they don't explain it, but
they attempt.
They don't explain it. They make it honestly. They make it worse. Like I feel like if you don't know anything about totems and the mystical elements of Spider-Man that should not exist but does, it's yeah, that movie didn't do that justice. Anyway, let's move on to housekeeping.
Yes, housekeeping.
And I am moving housekeeping after the news. Normally we do it before, because I kind of want to go ahead and preface this funky way we had to handle this episode.
Mm-hmm.
End of Spider-Verse is very special, and it's special in the sense that while May is in the series and has a story, sort of, she's more of a highlighted cameo than anything. And so to try to make this an enjoyable episode and a decent conversation, especially for our audio listeners, the way we handle these reviews are going to be kind of set up a little bit differently than normal. Zach is going to go into Spider history, and he'll break down May's involvement in these issues 1 through 4. And again, May's involvement. We're not going straight in. Obviously, we do need to touch on some of the story as a high level, just so you understand what's happening. But ultimately, we're not diving deep here, because look at the show name. It's Make Mine Mayday. We're going to talk about Mayday Parker and the world of 982, MC2 world. We're not talking about anybody else. They're boring.
Let's put it this way: these four issues are in a paragraph that's like this big.
Yeah, basically. And then I'll break down May's involvement in issues 5 through 7. We'll chat about the story. Well, originally we were going to chat about the story as a whole, and then I was going to go into the coda, which is the 2 pages in Edge of Spider-Verse Volume 4, Issue 4. And then we'll chat. But really, I just kind of included the coda in my stuff, and we'll chat over it as a whole. So we kind of have our middle break point to chat, and then the end. While, yes, the Marvel Comics Unlimited Spider-Verse story did drop just before this ended.
Yeah.
Since it's a digital-only comic and does not actually apply to this, which further proves it's not canon. We will discuss it next episode as we move on to the Marvel Unlimited apps special digital comics and cover both Mayday Spider-Verse Unlimited story next month, and then we will discuss a Nexus return in Avengers Unlimited. And with that, let's get into some Spider history.
The history of this, we're going to go way back to the around the time that we were just talking about, 2003, actually a little bit later. So I feel like I must highlight in this episode the Other and our antagonist SHATHRA in our spider history for purposes of this explanation. I'll try to go in chronological order mostly, but I'm going to have to bounce around a little bit. SHATHRA first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man 46, Volume 2, aka Legacy 487. Thanks to the box on the cover for reminding me. This was another one of the Totem Saga characters that Ezekiel said were coming back to ASM, starting in ASM 30, which was the beginning of the first Moreland story in his first appearance. SHATHRA was the Spider-Wasp and sought to mate with Peter as a result of defeating Moreland, and he was also defeated Shade, a character that was another mystical character, and basically Peter was supposed to not stray away in the astral plane, and he did, and this causes her to go on national TV, declare them lovers, and cause all sorts of chaos for Peter's personal life. So why did she do this? It was simply to get the spider out of him, for him to put aside the man and just be purely the spider for the fight. Needless to say, Zeke also sent Peter to Ghana after Peter had cloaked himself in spiders after she initially defeated him via the Wasp's sting. So thanks to Totem Mumbo Jumbo, she was killed via a bunch of spiders. I had to go back and reread this stuff to remember a lot of it because it was like just only 2 issues that she appeared in. She had a lot of cameos. She was referenced several times afterwards, but for the most part, that was it until we get to later on a little bit. So that story actually leads to Peter and MJ's reconciliation in ASM 50, aka 491. So all's well that ends well, right? Wrong. Let's get into the Other story. So what exactly is the Other? Well, it was a 12-issue storyline that occurred in 2005. This was the first time Moreland had returned, as originally he was to be written as a one-off character, as was most of JMS's villains at the time. However, the writer of Amazing Spider-Man, J. Michael Straczynski, floated the idea of the Other out. Marvel's mighty marketing department jumped in, said we should launch a new title with this, and I believe offering the writing duties originally to Mark Waid, who was to reteam with Mike Ringo after their legendary Fantastic Four run. But instead, he declined and then it was offered to Peter David, starting a trend of him being forced into writing Spider-Man-related events in any book that wasn't ongoing. Anyway, so in the Other storyline, Peter was killed by Moreland in a fun twist, had his eyeball eaten on panel. Gross. Anyway, Peter died again and was rebirthed as a giant spider again. First time it happened was in Marvel Fanfare. The second time it happened was actually with Tom DeFalco's story, one of his final issues of. And the third time was with Spectacular Spider-Man, which is how they explained him getting his organic webs. So anyway, for this story, as it was part of the Totem Saga, it's highlighted in the stories that involve the Spider-Verse. Peter, dead, but the spider part wasn't dead, is reborn. So he is back to normal. Anyway, that sleeping dog didn't lie, as the Other had to go to someone, and Peter rejecting the spider, despite it healing him, is no longer the Other thanks to Kane. Kane became the Other during a Scarlet Spider series where he was unceremoniously killed by the Lobo brothers, who had a sister that nobody knew about. Becoming the Other was an ongoing plot point in the title until it was canceled when Kane was met by SHATHRA, who had impersonated Kane's love interest to, never mind. I'm not going to complete the sentence. Anyway, Kane becomes the Other again, kills SHATHRA, and we have to abruptly end that book. I ranted about it both on Crawlspace at my time there, as well as Clone Saga Chronicles, so you can find those episodes talking about Kane and Scarlet Spider. Anyway, this is the last time we would see her, actually, until this story. The other appearances between this and now are pretty much exclusively in flashback form. So now we are officially caught up. There was a miniseries that saw the return of Aranya as herself, away from the mixing of Spider-Girl and Spider-Woman. We are also introduced in that miniseries to other Spider people like Spider UK, Spider Hunter, Sun Spider, Night Spider, Spinstress, Web Weaver, and more. So that leads me to the breakdowns. So that's the end of Spider history here, and we go strictly into breakdowns. So Spider-Man #1, volume 3, technically. Each of these issues have the same creative team, save for Edge of Spider-Verse, so we will just do this one time. I'll mention the titles when they came out, I forgot to put the release dates in there, but it all came out in 2022, 2023. Same team on all these issues. throughout the entire 7 parts that we're talking about. So the title of this first issue is The One and Only Ish. Writer is Dan Slott. Mark Bagley is the artist. John Dale, the nemesis of Neil, is the inker. Colors are Edgar Delgado and letterers Joe Caramanga. Design was by Jay Bowden. Assistant editor was Lindsay Chowick. Editor was Nick Lowe. Editor-in-chief is C.B. Cebulski. And as they mention in every Spider-Man comic nowadays, Spider-Man created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Okay, in our issue, opens with Peter working with Norman, because if you've read the Zeb Wells run, tasked was getting some materials back for Oscorp now, because it's officially known as Oscorp. It wasn't that way until... it wasn't this way in the 616 until, like, the 2000s. You're welcome, Josh. Peter is successful in saving the day. SHATHRA has corrupted Annie in the miniseries that led to this and watches on back in the Spider Sanctuary. Spider UK, Aranya, and Madam Web, Julie Carpenter, are there to regroup. Peter's spider sense is going crazy. Spider-Wasp show up. Moreland shows up, and Peter starts the battle with him. The other spiders of 616 show up, fight him. Spider Noir, who we thought was dead, is actually alive. He shows up, has a knife, stabs Jessica with the magic dagger of destiny, erasing her from existence. Turns out Moreland is a good guy, as I put it back. And the black portals are open, and we see the end of the issue with Mayday, Gwen, Spider-Punk, and Noir all having been turned into Spider-Wasp. I'll throw this up on the screen for those that are listening to the audio edition. This is, again, going to be a reference to a visual aid, so I do apologize. So this was the appearance of Mayday in the first issue. She's in a Spider-Waspified form. So, dun dun dun. That leads me to issue number 2, called Last Spider-Man Standing. After encountering the Spider-Man from Avengers Campus, we learn more spiders there are to capture him. Or more spiders are there to capture him. Back in NYC 616, we get the standoff between sides. Mayday makes an awful joke about Peter joining the dark side, calling her dad. Moreland attacks Mayday, and Silk stops her. Then Gwen and Mayday, talking in unison, says there's no turning back, only SHATHRA now. Aranya is back and shows up. Peter is corrected in calling her Spider-Girl. It's Aranya now, thank God. They all escape. We spend several pages getting exposition of what happened, from Moreland eating Spider-Boy, the Amalgam Universe's version, Spider-Man having turned and eating children, to Moreland getting his ass kicked by SHATHRA. Turns out he's a Spider-Man 2 via digestion, apparently. Miles has been kind of turned. I say kind of. She sees all. We then to be continued. We get to issue number 3, titled Spinning Out of Control. Miles is turned. Moreland wants to eat him. Turns out he's not fully turned because he's of 2 worlds. And Madam Web explains that in like 2 panels. He becomes a double agent, essentially. Peter, Anya, and Felicia go to the Temple of Loom, as Peter has termed it. And I'm going to term it that way because I think it's funny. To go get a shiny artifact. Miles and the Hunter leave to go kill SHATHRA. Moreland says, let's go get the magic dagger and use it to kill SHATHRA and end this story. Peter and Anya are having middling success, while Moreland shows back up in 616 with Mayday and the rest of the Wasp having been trapped there for the time being. SHATHRA then sends her swarm to the Temple of Loom. Moreland finds out the knife isn't there, that Princess Petra has turned into a Spider-Wasp. Peter then gets stabbed and erased, and that's the end of issue 3. Issue 4, The Unraveling. After seeing the death of the Osborn Goblin and Spider-Man, he then zaps things back to a different reality. We get a recap via Julia about what's happened. There is no future. Night Spider and Anya escape with their lives thanks to booby traps, and on Miles uses his Venom Blast on SHATHRA, and it does absolutely nothing. Miles is then captured and sent to a place where she couldn't turn them. Mayday and 2099 place Miles in shackles. The rest, we have MJ, aka Spinneret, due to her getting her power from her suit, 8-bit Peter Parker, Peter Parked Car, a tiny spider, and Peter Parker from Earth 982 in full-on the other spider form. Should I throw it up on the screen, Kelly? Or do we want to wait till we get to talking about it?
Let's wait. Okay. Also, too, just since I got off mute, Spider-Man number 1 came out October 5th, 2022.
Thank you.
Spider-Man issue 2 came out November 9th, 2022. Spider-Man 3 came out December 7th, 2022. And issue 4 came out January 4th, 2023.
So the first week of the month, basically, is when these come out.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did. Someone who had to review them for the crawl space.
Oh boy. So
no, that's what it's like. It's like I know this. Like I'm almost glazing over because it's like I.
Yeah, you got tasked with reviewing these on satellites.
I asked. Anything with Mayday, I always try to.
There you go. So back to the 616. We have Silk knock out our princess. Then we learn why or what prototype Earth is. It's the home of Peter Palmer, aka Spider-Man, aka Amazing Fantasy 15 Spidey. Marlin wants the real Spider-Man back. Meanwhile, at Oscorp Plaza, at the beginning of the issue, Osborn has sent the final strand of the Web of Life via portals to this Oscorp Plaza, and it turns to the Peter Parker of Earth 616? Question mark. To be continued. So Kelly, what are your thoughts while you're doing that? I'm gonna figure out what's wrong with Waylon.
Okay, well, one, I better not hear any slander towards the best character ever, which is Spintress. She is a Disney princess who sings, but she is also a spider. It's great. Like, I love her. Anyway,
it's Spider Princess.
It's a spider princess. But ultimately, this check-in here is just kind of like so we can kind of get our thoughts out, especially because, oh my god. As you can see, May and Peter are kind of just glorified cameos turned Wasp and Giant Spider for shock and awe purposes. And even then, it really wasn't too much of a shock and awe since, well, the fans had been calling it. We had been making jokes that since he was now the other, he was going to be a giant spider. It had been talking about that because we're like, how does that even work in that world? Well, turns out he doesn't have to be a big giant spider in the world of 982. Just for this, just here. But he still has to be because of course, and it's like I said, like I was like, I wrote it's like, yeah, because we were talking about it saying, wouldn't this be lame as hell? Here it is, kids.
Hey kids, we accidentally predicted this I'm sorry.
Yeah, and now we have to see it. And now you can totally give visual aids for the people watching on YouTube because I need you to see him. I need you to see Peter as a giant spider. Look at him. Look at him.
Dun dun.
No.
Dun dun dun.
Be serious. This is a really like terrible moment. Like think about it. Think about it. He died. He was like destroyed. His like home was destroyed.
He almost looks like he's smiling there.
I don't know if he's I think at this point I don't know, man. I think they were all on drugs at this point. That's
damn it, Professor. This is what happens when he's in our hemisphere. He's in Brazil now. He goes, imagine him going to sleep and seeing that at night. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily,
hopefully he was plucked out of the time stream right after he.
Well, I've got like in my notes, I've got this. But yeah, so we, now like we had to see this. So now this has been put on official paper. This was printed. So it is technically official lore. It is technically a part of 982 Peter's hit story. There it is. It's there. It exists now. But also, and this is like just me kind of trying my best to make sense of this entire thing. The thing is about this, and this gets worse as we get like towards the end. If it is not a main character of the story, they are written so they are straight up NPCs, and it could be a wash, rinse, repeat character saying these lines, and it wouldn't matter. It doesn't have to necessarily be Peter as a giant spider or May as a wasp. Like I said, they are glorified cameos at this point. They're just walking in, they're not there. Yeah, like it's so terrible.
I mean, this is really bad dialogue. It's it's basically this is the panel right before the reveal of Peter
But
as
you know what?
Spider.
This is the most in character she is in the entire run.
This
Because I
entire
could see
story.
her. I could see her not believing that it's him, believing that it's somebody trying to trick her.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because he's a giant spider. So that's why I was like, oh, this makes sense. And then all of a sudden it just completely flip-flops the next time she talks about it. It's maddening. But
I
you
I did
know,
want to throw this up because you used
yes,
this in the promotional stuff for this
it's
episode.
me.
Peter
It's
is
me.
you. Blank. We're doing a Spider-Verse again, aren't we?
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's everybody. But yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
Here we go. We got a $20
thank you,
super
Vinkman.
chat. Thank you, Vinkman. He says, I don't know what's worse, seeing 982 Peter as the other or Peter parked car.
Yeah, let me get through my notes. I touch base on Peter parked car. But yeah, so like I mean I get it. Like I get why they're kind of out of character. This is kind of wild and bonkers story to begin with. 982 Peter is literally talking to Peter parked car. And that's always going to be a little too weird to make sense. And yes, that is Peter Park. That is that car's name, the dune buggy that you see. His name is Peter Parked Car. I hate life every day knowing that he exists in this world. So thank you, Dan Slott. And that I have to talk about him right now, just like I had to last year. It's a really tough existence. It's really bad. I have to talk to a therapist. I hate Peter Parked Car.
Park car.
Gosh. But anyway, like I said, I have a hard time being able to weave this into the 982 lore like I have with the other Spider-Verses because of the lack of like real time spent with our characters.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't getting a lot of May's psyche in this one like we did in the others. Like, we at least get to kind of touch base on where she's at emotionally. Here we definitely don't. This is, like I said, glorified cameo. And like I said, like when she's was under SHATHRA's spell, she seems to be a very like totally in line, good soldier. And that's not May. That's not our Mayday. Like at no point in this, even in other Spider-Verse series, has Mayday just allowed something to completely take her over. She's too stubborn. Her willpower is like Herculean. But of course, the story wasn't really made with her or her universe in mind as a whole. That is a good thing. Because we weren't having the popcorn insanity that Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon had. Ultimately, the story itself, if you read it all the way through, it is very streamlined and, dare I say, polished, even though it's not the greatest story in the world. It's nowhere near perfect, and it does feel a bit rushed towards the end. It's not 100% thought out at times, but it's definitely gone through more rounds of drafts than the first Spider-Verse did, for sure. And like that's really clear. And I think May's involvement here is more of an afterthought. Like they knew that they needed to add her and bring up Peter from the events of Spider-Geddon. They also knew that they couldn't do anything too drastic with them. So glorified cameo as a wasp and a giant spider. Also,
and given that
you need to talk about Peter's reveal as a giant spider, like because it's so unceremonious. Like,
yeah,
it just shows up, and at first you're just like, wait.
Excuse me?
Peter parked cars calling that giant spider Peter. Giant spider. The other. Oh, that is her dad. Like it's so like you're kidding me, right? Like but yeah. And mostly it's like I said, like he's talking to Peter parked car just so nonchalantly, and that just like gives me a brain aneurysm. I can't.
I mean, it's like, don't worry about it. We'll get out of this, Peter. Thanks, Peter. What?
Please stop.
This Peter who has never interacted and never been a part of a multiversal storyline.
He just climbed out of the grave, then became a giant spider, and is now imprisoned on Loom World.
And it makes sense
with a car that has boots on it.
It does. So it can't move. It has two parking boots.
I can't. Like I can't, and that's
Because
like I
one
really
parking boot
can't.
was not enough to contain
No,
the strength of Peter
all
Parker.
four,
All
all four wheels, 4-wheel drive. But
Also, given that, because again, having reread those Shathra and Kane stuff really quickly, it makes sense that Peter has been shunted off here because the other killed a version of Shathra before. So it's like, or it was Kane as the other. So I'm like, okay, so that makes sense. Spinneret, her power is tied to her suit. Makes sense. I don't know why 8-Bit and Peter Parker are here, but fine. Maybe he just couldn't bring himself to. I guess Shathra can't.
but also like just Atari Spider-Man beep boop also like kills me inside. It kills me.
Yeah.
But anyway, like too, it's like the line from May from that like above where we kind of go, oh yeah, all right, we're about to see a giant spider is so childishly written. And like I said, it's the most in character she is the entire time because it at least comes from a place of disbelief. Like this whole like, oh, we're just gonna roll with these shenanigans. Like, no, it's no. And Neil,
Damn it, Neil.
anyway,
there is a question
very
about
clunky.
why you hate Peter Parker, and we can explain that maybe later in the episode.
I mean, I just hate Peter Parker because I had to read that issue of Edge of Spider-Verse against my will, really.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. That's funny.
Like it's you know, I can suspend disbelief on a guy that, you know, is bitten by a radioactive spider and doesn't immediately die, but I draw the line at talking cars. Like talking cars with spider powers. Like I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No. But anyway, the whole thing I kind of really want to get into is just my thing with this line and why I say I think it's probably the most in character is the fact that her not being able to believe that it's him after having to put him in the ground after everything she's been through since the beginning of Spider-Verse would make sense because it's, you know, and this is my mind's way of trying to salvage what's happening here. But like May fighting her father, who probably turned into a giant spider almost immediately after climbing his own grave, is very in line, I think, with just a normal spider idea. And I also have to like wonder like just how recent is this from the end of Spider-Geddon?
Yeah.
You know, like did she go home from the wake of Spider-Geddon, walk up to the house and see this giant spider like and start fighting and then, you know, or did she like something you know, this giant spider is something she saw in Annie's world like in Spider-Geddon after the events of Spider-Girls. And, you know, is this just like a fight or like could this maybe also explain Annie being the first one that was like swathed or whatever, wasped? Because like, you know, obviously Annie got to be the first person turned into a wasp because she's the big new web weaver. So did like May see a giant spider in her world and call for Annie somehow, even though the wristbands were destroyed? And then did Annie attack them somehow with the wasps? You know, since Peter is the other, you know, he couldn't be changed into said wasp, but then somehow was like kidnapped and imprisoned, which I, you know, like I said, like I like, did he go chasing after Wasp May as like a giant daddy spider? Like, I don't know. Like,
a giant daddy long legs.
Yeah. But like, I really don't know how to like make this story work. I'm trying my best.
Well,
but obviously, like,
yeah,
there's ways to make that work. There's ways to make that make sense and connected, but it's just I wind up with a lot of questions. Like, there's a lot of situations because obviously this wasn't the main point of Thought Out. Like, nobody was thinking, oh, we need to do a one shot explaining this with Mayday. It's just very weird. yeah. So I don't know, but yeah. Also, page 13, issue 3. May's arms and shoulders are like hella jacked, like Sarah Connor level.
I forgot to
Terminator 2. It's fine, and I appreciate that from the artistry, like the artists, whoever, if it was Bagley or the inkers. I just need to shout that out. We'll talk more about Peter being a giant spider later, though. We're not done yet.
But wait,
we're not done. There is more.
Yeah, sorry, I was getting some of the visual aids for the Edge of Spider-Verse.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So for that later. But no, I mean, my thoughts really quickly are of these 4 issues. This is, again, it has the advantage of Slott actually having time to write these books. Yeah, and he was turned at the end of Miles's
Edge. Yeah, it was Edge story. That was so Marcy is answering the professor, asking if we had seen May actually get turned, and we don't.
No. Yeah.
So, but we
and SHATHRA, to answer your question about the I mean, how could conceivably no prize explanation is
okay, but this is my thing. Even if they're wasps, I just want to say 2 teenage girls trying to like tackle down this like giant spider to imprison them. Like that's my thing. That's the thing that I can't like get my head around.
No. Yeah. I mean, the only way that would make sense is if SHATHRA shoots a dart and paralyzes him, because that's what she did to Peter in the first story.
Yeah.
So which would cause him to be immobilized, and then, yeah. But I'm doing more editing work than the editors are doing.
That's yeah. You notice that? You notice how with Low, like there's no editing? What?
I mean, we do get Ellie.
Sorry, I said I was going to be good. I said I was going to be good this year about that.
I know. We do get Ellie Pyle. Speaking of editorial, we do get Ellie Pyle.
We do. We do.
Former editor of Spider-Girl. So yeah, for the most part, I mean, these are fine. This story is fine. And I think because Slott wasn't writing anything else at the time, you are correct. I think it's a far more streamlined story. It's not trying to sit there and pull all this other stuff. It's just one book, and he's telling it with one artist and keeping it simple, stupid. So it reads a lot better than the other 2 stories. It's not got needless amount of tie-ins. It's just telling a story to tell a story. And yes, it does have the tie-ins, but he's not involved with those.
Well, too, the tie-ins weren't happening while the story was going on. You have your Edge of Spider-Verse at the beginning, and then you have your Edge of Spider-Verse at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's, it's in terms of tie-ins, there's leading up to the main story, and then there's the aftermath, or the coda, or etc., which is kind of turned into more just let's create more and more spiders.
Yeah.
So there's that. Because I think now the current Edge of Spider-Verse is all very movie based. Because we could talk about the 97 variant that features a version of Mayday with red hair and one brown eye, one blue eye, and says 97 variant, even though officially, even with because yes, it was on the shelf in 97, but officially What If 105 came out in 1998.
Yeah. I've got the amazing cover from that was similarly done.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot of like movie related tie-ins. And so, but yeah, so I think with that, do you have anything else you want to say, or should I go ahead?
I mean, let's jump into the deep end with the last 4 issues.
Let's get into the multiverse of madness.
Not with Doctor Strange this time.
No. He'd be like, WTF is this, and walk out.
He wasn't the original.
This is why I died. This is why I died. He didn't want to deal with this. Anyway, Spider-Man issue 5. I'm going to have to jump over to Mike's Amazing World of Comics. Thank you for saving us, as always. So
Rest
it
in
was
peace,
on the
Mike.
shelf. Yes, rest in peace. On the shelf, February 15th, 2023. And breakdown. I'm not getting into the altered 616 where Peter becomes Cindy's helper. I'm not. And that's all this issue was. This is a Spider-Girl show, and we will talk about World 982 here. 616 gets 10,000 other shows. Like Amazing Spider Talk and Crawl Space and Spidey Jude Experience.
There you go.
We're not talking about this here. But it's a thing now. There's an altered 616 where Peter doesn't have powers, and he is now Cindy's scientist friend. Anyway, we're ignoring it. Beyond this, Altered Peter does help with the spiders left from Spider's Man to help them. And we're moving on to Spider-Man issue 6.
March 1st.
Which March 1st, 2023. In Loom World, now that Peter is removed from the web, SHATHRA can remold it into whatever she wants. So she does, causing a bunch of chaos and destruction to Earth 616 because this is a Spider-Man title after all. The team, still standing, creates a really dumb plan about pretending to be taken in as prisoners to Loom World. Anya decided to have a play on Star Wars, and obviously it didn't quite work out as planned. Like it also didn't work in Star Wars. So, could have thought that through, Anya, a little bit. Mostly the only reason it didn't work, though, is because SHATHRA could not read their minds. Peter Palmer barrels in. There's a fight. Moreland tries to stab SHATHRA. Spider-Craven shoots a sleep dart into May and Miguel's necks, both of whom were watching the prisoners we saw in issue 4. Spider Felicia and Julia break the prisoners out. Our Peter, has a weird, clunky line about wanting to help everyone they love, which it's just clunky in how it plays out on the panel. It wasn't needed, but I appreciate the sentiment. Especially trying to give him a line at least. But basically the prisoners are going to help the team that are not wasps. More fighting. SHATHRA reminds us that Moreland is just a parasite. We cut to altered 616 Peter creating something for Cindy using the fragments of the Web of Life. We cut back to Loom World with more fighting. The prisoners try to surprise SHATHRA, but she becomes too powerful. Peter is really out of his element here as a giant spider, and I feel bad that he woke up from his dirt nap to this. He should have stayed dead. We find out that Cindy is no bride or the Queen of Spiders. She is the chosen one now. Not from the guy whose story we've been following for 60 plus years. No, Cindy's the chosen one now. The character slot created totally not based off his fetishes, and other writers have spent like a decade or more trying to fix her. But anyway, now it's totally fixed now that she's not the bride. She's the chosen one, she's fixed. It's fixed. Totally works. Let's forget it. Let's forget the origins. Right? Anyway, totally fine. Plus, anyway, Cindy basically in all the confusion and the fights, Cindy totally takes a stab at Moreland, something she's been wanting to do this entire time, but claims it was done in self-defense. She stabs Moreland. And it's a win-win, but when she does it, it causes light to burst out of Moreland instead of him unraveling. And basically, by stabbing Moreland, Cindy is able to release all the spiders that Moreland ever ate, and restore them into the Great Web. I love plot. Plot is great. Anyway, SHATHRA claims Cindy, and as the issue closed, SHATHRA claims Cindy has doomed us all. So that brings me to Spider-Man issue 7, which was released on April 5th, 2023. Thanks to Cindy's need to stab Moreland, the Great Web has been reset. Everyone is cured of their waspness, But also every spider is being sent now to the end of Spider-Verse. Where is the end, you ask? It's in everyone's drafts. So as everyone is being like flung through all of space and time to the draft world of 616, Spinneret asks May if she's seen her husband or Annie. And May hasn't, but then asks if anyone has seen a big giant spider because that's her father now. You know, the other, she very nonchalantly says, yeah, he's the other now, which doesn't match or line up with the scene from earlier. And also, does every spider know about the totems? Because I don't think every spider knows about the totems. So, like, that's a very weird statement. Sorry. It just is. Anyway, again, we don't really see the... Yeah. So anyway, we don't get to see the other stories that could have come from this, as this is very much a Cindy-led story. So it's very weird feeling these little shoehorned comments like this. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, SHATHRA comes back as a kaiju. The spiders battle her. May is front and center and leading the charge against SHATHRA when Cindy tells them to attack, because you know now she's the chosen one. Miles shows up driving Peter parked car. He was able to drive Peter parked car to all the different multiverse portals that SHATHRA had blocked off and got those spiders to come help kick her butt, aka all the Zentai big giant spider bots, the other kaijus. Altered 616, who is still altered for plot, even though the Great Web is reset and has finished things. Anyway, has finished his cure and shoots it at SHATHRA. This ends SHATHRA. And then the ghost of her little sister, Neith, the first spider totem, comes to give them a new spider jewel that they use to bring Jessica back to life and revert 616 Peter back to Spider-Man. And then Kane gets rewoven back to life, and so does Spider-Boy. We're not going to talk about Bailey. That's a character for another time. Also, all of this was done for Bailey. If y'all didn't know. This entire thing was done to introduce Bailey, Spider-Boy. Anyway, we see that the gigantic...
Partially because I think the copyright on Spider-Boy expired. And so it's no longer a co-ownership between Marvel.
Oh, so it's not because the greatest responsibility that you could ever have is to have a random orphan, a random 10-year-old orphan be your sidekick?
No, of course not. It has nothing to do with that. It's all business, Kelly. I mean, we even see the half-eaten arm of Spider-Boy, because that's all they could show legally. So
it's true. Anyway, we see the gigantic spider that is now Peter Parker of 982 ask May if she can ask the chosen one, meaning Cindy, how long he might need to stay a big giant spider. I don't think Cindy would know or could really help, but you know, all right, that's a thing to ask, I guess. We end the Spider-Verse with Peter realizing that he has a responsibility, or 616 Peter has a responsibility for his world, the 616, and all he wants is to be the 616's Spider-Man. The end, I guess, for now. As I stated, I originally had Spider-Man 8 on here, but it actually goes more into Bailey, and May is not there, so that we're not talking about that on the show. But the series isn't quite over yet, as we do have another coda, like with Spider-Geddon. And this time it is in Edge of Spider-Verse Volume 4, Issue 4. So here we go. It was released on July 5th, 2023. The story is in, it's like 3 different stories. This is the last story in the issue. It's called Charging Station. Alex Segura is writer. Enid Balam is penciler. Elizabeth Diamaco and Craig Yang are the inkers. Brian Rubber is the color artist, and VC's Joe Caramanga is the letterer. So this issue, like I said earlier, has 3 stories in it. We're going to focus on Aranya in Charging Station, and honestly, we just need to focus on the first 2 pages because we start this story in the world of 982. In this story is in Anya's point of view and storytelling. She tells the audience that she's Aranya now. And again, She's a Rania now, again. But she used to go by Spider-Girl once, and the person she's fighting beside is now Spider-Girl. Again. May is Spider-Girl again. This is, like I said, it's basically kind of saying, see, look, we gave her name back. We fixed it. Aren't you happy? Huh. Anyway, Hobgoblin is fighting them, and I can't quite wrap my head around it since, the last time we saw 982 Hobgoblin, April killed him. He's dead. Anya doesn't quite make it clear what world this Hobgoblin is, but she does say that Roderick is a multi-universal pain, so it's possible he's from another universe, I guess, especially since she does say that the only reason she's in World 982 was to take him down. And Anya does tend to do universe hopping lately in the comics, so I guess he could be from a different universe and somehow found his way to 982. I don't know. But as the girls get ready for Hobgoblin's attack, a person in a red hoodie and blue leggings webs Hobgoblin up and causes the charging villain to crash and fall, causing May to go whelp in the anticlimactic end of this fight. Turns out Peter is taking turns wearing Hoodie Girl, as he's wearing his old suit with a hoodie on for some reason. I don't think 982 publicly, I don't think the world publicly made aware that Spider-Man was dead. Did they? I don't recall that in our when we've previously touched base here. I know that the Avengers knew, and I guess maybe there was some subreddit tracking Spider-Girl in this universe that might have made some theories with her costume change and the "I'm Spider-Woman" lines that everyone ignored from her. Anyway, I have questions. But May sarcastically tells him that the costume is nice and totally can't easily be figured out. Especially when he takes off his hood and has no mask in the middle of the street in broad daylight.
Oh.
I'm sorry. This is... Anyway. Peter, I know you died, but I don't think people have forgotten what you look like, sir. Put the hood back on, at least.
I mean, he did wear a green hoodie one time against Mr. Hyde.
But did he take it off in broad daylight so everyone could see his face?
No, he did not. No.
Okay. Anyway, so Anya makes note. She's glad to see Peter is no longer a giant spider, and Peter thanks her for her help in getting him back to normal. He now has both legs back, seemingly. So better than normal. Now there's no stopping him. Now there's no stopping him from being Spider-Man.
MJ's like, damn it, I'd rather you.
Damn. Anyway,
or MJ, arranges an unfortunate tragic accident for him to lose his leg again. See, right? You're back. You can't be Spider-Man again.
Nope.
MJ.
Nope. Anyway,
I'm younger. He'll just grow back.
Yeah. Yep. So turns out Anya used her magic to turn someone else into being the other, since Big Giant Spider didn't really seem to suit our Peter. Before Anya tries to leave, May does try to check in with her, from one young girl to another who's been dealt with a ton of upheaval from crappy writers. I mean, multiverse and magic shenanigans. But Anya doesn't want to talk about it. Anya seemingly doesn't seem to take the Hobgoblin with her, so that makes me wonder about the implications of said Hobgoblin. Again, I have questions. Anyway, she leaves, and I'm not reading the story past this because why?
There's no reason.
That's it for us. That's it. And that's it for the end of the Spider-Verse. It only took 9 years and 15 writers to put the toys back in the box again. With no harm done. No harm done. Though obviously, as we're going to talk about, and to paraphrase the Houston-born philosopher, that is Beyonce. Okay, really, she paraphrased a 19th century philosopher, but let me have some fun here. The situation is like a mirror. You can fix what's been broken, but you'll always see the cracks. In fact, we go into this and talk about it as a whole next episode with the Marvel Unlimited Spider-Verse story. But because
we got a lot
to me, the the world of 982 is being lost to time thanks to no one wanting to hold on to what's been written before. And I mean, it's not just in Marvel, but it's very clear. That's kind of what's happening with Spider-Girl right now. And it's quite not unlike what happened in these 2 pages, as I honestly can't get past the Hobgoblin situation. So anyway, I'll hand it over to Zach and let him give his thoughts before we dive in deep about how this ends. Zach, are you there? Did you freeze? Oh no. Did I freeze?
Freeze. I'm back.
There we go. Now you're back.
I'm back.
We're frozen.
I was frozen. My Wi-Fi decided we're done. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's fair.
my Wi-Fi was like, having to listen to this is, maddening. So again, the end of the story, you're right, it is very rushed. It's weird because they were trying. It felt like that there was attempts to put in like references to Disney stuff, like the Temple of Loom and stuff like that. Obviously, the creation of the greatest of all the alternate spiders outside of Spider-Girl, which was the princess. But
we don't speak negative about Spintress. She is the best character that was ever created.
I was not speaking. I was not speaking negative. I was just saying she's like, she's a tier below, Spider-Girl. Spider-Girl's top tier.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
So, that being said, it is interesting how, to me, they should have just flat out just let Moreland die. I know he goes off to go into the Carnage story and shows up there. But why do we have to keep the vampire alive?
Because Sony really wants him in a movie one day.
Well, after watching what they did to Ezekiel, I don't want them touching any more JMS characters. There is a big dichotomy. I'll say this, having just went back and reread the original SHATHRA story and rereading this, there is a very clear, stark difference between the writing styles of Dan Slott and the writing style of James.
Of Aller? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And even Yost. Yost, I don't blame. Yost thought he was getting a 3rd year of Scarlet Spider, and instead they turned it into a New Warriors title. So he was having to smash stuff together at the very end. And it's very clear on how it was done. They brought in poor David Baldeon, and he did not have time to really do anything. It felt like. So the original story is written very serious, and it's written very straight. And so reading SHATHRA here, she's very mustache twirling comparatively, and it's like it does not even suit anything that she's written. And it's just
okay. So my one curse word, which I've held on to for a long time. But I'm going to use it here. The bastardization of SHATHRA.
Yes. Yeah.
So can I get on a little rant? I didn't write it down, so it might be all over the place. But this is something I touched base on when I originally reviewed the series with the crawl space. As it's all very much written by someone who is trying their best to prove that they're not sexist. But in doing so, they are just proving that they don't know how to write women in the way that they are shoehorning these different female characters that they clearly don't have a voice for.
Agreed. I agree with that.
It is something I've said, and I'm sure okay, I'm going to everything's going to blow up and be like, I can't believe you said this, blah, 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 because I get it all the time. But sorry, Slott can't write women. I said that.
No.
I'm sorry.
And it's funny how in all 3 of these Spider-Verse books, there's been the first one was clearly supposed to be a Peter story. The second one's very clearly supposed to be a Miles story. And the third one is supposed to be a Cindy story, but then it turns into a Bailey story at the very end. Like they found out that they could use the title of Spider Boy and, manage through that. Yeah, apparently Paul is Peter Parker.
Yes, that's fine.
Although there is a reference to a Paul in the Spectacular Spider-Man, and that has nothing to do with the Paul that we know.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to star this comment, Professor, because we're going to talk about that because I'm a little lost. But I want us to get through things, and then we'll get down to the questions for the end of the episode.
So again, when you read the original SHATHRA story and you read this, it's very stark. When you read just this is a good Dan Slott story. It's one of his better ones. Because again, I think because he had time to actually craft it and actually develop the craft, and he's not having to worry about plotting the next 6 issues. He's actually able to.
I don't think he was necessarily told, hey, we have to hit this moment and this moment and this moment and this moment for this event. You know what I mean? Like this story did kind of go under the radar in that aspect. And so there was a little bit, I think, not necessarily maybe more time, but at least more freedom to be a little bit more creative. And I think Zach froze again.
Take 2. All right, there we go. I'm in the middle of a thought, and T-Mobile says nope.
Yep.
So what I was saying was not having the weight of being the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think allows him to actually be better as a writer. He's not having to lead the charge, and he's not having the pressure of writing ASM, which is an entirely different animal. No, they don't want me speaking the truth there, Neil. And so
Marvel overlords are listening.
But if you see an Anthony come pop in the chat, we'll know. But so again, I think it's I think Bagley does a good job with the art. I think he's a good artist. Is he as good as he was 10 years ago? I think that's partly John Dell's inks. I'm not a huge fan of his inking of Bagley. And so, but I'll say this. I think again, not having the focus on May, like you said earlier throughout the episode a couple different times, is an addition by subtraction because he doesn't clearly know how to write May. Obviously,
it's not just May. Like that's the thing. It really isn't.
Yeah,
but
it's like May 982-1. Well,
I mean, it's also like having, he loves to claim that he created Annie, which I guess in some way, shape, or form, but not the Annie that is in the series that, really was more like, to me, molded by Jodie as a teen because they're aged up. And
by the way, I do want to mention she is recovering from a major injury. Our thoughts are with her. Absolutely.
Yes, most definitely. But yeah, no. And like I said, the whole thing though is you see how Annie is written. And I wouldn't necessarily, I would put Annie in the same kind of boat as May. Like she should be fighting this.
She is convenient for plot.
Well, both of them are. A lot of them are. But like even like Gwen, at least like Gwen is sort of like on the, seems more like, well, it's because we're listening. We're all the hive, like it's almost feels like, oh, they're being forced to do it versus, then of course, like I said, yes, I understand Miles is of 2 worlds. And because it's such a weird, different thing, that's why he can fight it. But the other characters seem to be talking like themselves.
Yeah.
Or like the men anyway, like Noir. Noir is talking like himself.
Like he's embraced the waspness.
Yeah. Like he's embraced it. He's embraced the madness. But What I'm saying though is like May and Annie don't sound like that.
No,
they never
No, they
have.
don't.
Like, I'm sorry, like you had Annie calling her mistress in the beginning, which I'm glad that got dropped because that was weird.
That's very odd.
You have a 16-year-old girl calling this adult woman mistress,
and that nobody
and
caught
being
that.
her slave. Well, it's low. What are you expecting? Anyway.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be negative and rude and mean about it. But you know, I've noticed a pattern, especially lately, of low edited things where a lot of teenage girls are kind of being like cannon fodder and not getting treated with. I mean, it's a little weird.
it is. It is. And again, I mean, we've talked about this, about needing potential differences at the top on multiple times on this network over the last several years now. But again, I think the reason I also wanted to mention the assistant editor is, seems like a lot of this stuff is being done by assistant editors now.
Yeah.
And Lowe is just supervising. And so,
but it's still his name.
But he's still the editor.
He's still responsible. Like at the end of the day, it's his name is on this issue. Mm-hmm. He's everybody who's editing this is responsible.
Yep.
And I can understand the fine line between wanting what the writer has written to be put on page and not like hindering that creativity, but there's also the line of, you do have to look at optics. You do have to look at what you're putting out and saying, is this good for our brand?
Yeah.
Is this alienating someone? Is this going to look okay in 10 years? And I think that that's gone out this like door. Like no one's thinking about the story. Let's be fair. No one is. But
is it a good Spider-Man story?
No one cares. That's the issue. But also it's when you are sitting there too and you've got your blinders on, it starts, you know what it like, I understand the point of they're not seeing beyond those blinders.
Right. Exactly.
But exactly. That's why I'm saying that's where a lot of this stuff is coming from. And I'm sorry, but there is a responsibility to the character. There's a responsibility to the brand that I don't think is happening in the current comics today. I've talked on this a lot. This is the most negative I've been this entire series, except for that time that there was a teenage girl in the shower. Because why?
Damn it, Tom. Revort. I mean, look. I mean,
he still wants to defend it.
We've talked about the, you know, a lot, and you know, as we get towards, I mean, we've got essentially next episode, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But you know, I'm glad we got more stuff, because ending on Spider-Geddon is a downer. Like ending the reviews section of the show on Spider-Geddon.
Well, we had to.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Her Marcy's comment for the audio listener. From her understanding, Annie was under full mind control due to her powers. Everyone else is just basically themselves, but evil. So I guess Noir and company just don't change. Well, Noir has always been morally corrupt and jaded via his world.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. Dumb question, but were there any women in the food chain for getting this issue out? Because somebody should have said something. There was a female assistant editor, and then Ellie Pyle comes in, but that's not until after this story has been published.
And I mean, like I said, it's I'm not there's a lot here, and I understand. Like me, I'm just reviewing it.
You're right.
It's my opinion. It's not like, any kind of official word. And my thing is just to me, it's this is especially at the height of the moment in Marvel, where to me, I just feel like optics were not thought about at all. Because I mean, this is only this ends a few weeks after before Miss Marvel and her death in 616 Spider-Man, which I will go on and on and on about how inappropriate and honestly sexist and racist that was.
Yeah, the backlash. Well, around the timing of this being published, also was around that time of the backlash too, because of the leak. And so,
well, and two, you can't tell me that a lot of what happened with Cindy also isn't from the very valid outcry that a lot of young female Twitter fans and a lot of just comic fans in general, but like off Twitter and off social media, were really pushing against Slott and how he was handling the criticism of the origin of Cindy Moon. They were valid in it. And eventually I think he broke down and agreed. But like, his ego took a hit. Therefore, at first he was angry. And if this was kind of that way of slightly fixing it or glossing it over, kind of saying, see, I do have good intentions with this character. I do love this character. It's like, no one ever said you didn't love the character. You just clearly didn't see that the optics of what you wrote and the fact that still got published and no one once thought about, hey, maybe a girl who is essentially made for Peter shouldn't, who is the bride apparently in Spider-Verse, maybe she shouldn't have started out like being in a container unit and like basically only being for this purpose.
Almost, I mean, what we see, especially in her nationality, the culture as well, and how you have, and it's not just Asians, but it's like Russians as well. I mean, Russian women as well. It's like it's problematic at best. Yeah, I didn't even notice that on the cover of X-Men 35, which is X-Men 700.
Yeah. Anyway, like we do need to get back to kind of
Mayday,
but this ties into a larger part here too, because from the last little bit, we this was only last year that the last time May was in print was posted, and I remember because everybody was saying there were people going all over Reddit saying, hey, you need to pick this up. If you love Mayday, you need to pick this up. And I was like, but it's not a Mayday story. It's Anya's. And she's in 2 pages. And this isn't even right because I literally don't understand why Hobgoblin is here.
No, 100%. I mean, there is blatant.
But this also isn't the first time, as we'll talk about later in the online story of the people that they are saying, hey, write this, put her in this book and write this. Because I'm sorry, I don't think they're coming at it saying, yeah, I want to put her in the book. No, somebody's telling them.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But the issue is like, okay, you're saying it, you're using her, you're making her your first NFT. How did that work out for you, Marvel? But the whole point is that this is here, but you're not giving them enough time to do the proper research.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we've got all this stuff, and clearly that doesn't matter. And so if you really want this reboot or a new series with our Mayday, how do you trust Marvel to tell the story correctly without the original creators. Because I don't see them asking Tom and Ron and, you know, Sal back. I don't even see them asking Jody.
No.
And that's kind of my thing, is that, okay, you have to understand here. You're going to get a new writer. And will they have enough time? Because from what I understand, this is supposed to also be like a part of the editor's job. It's supposed to be helping them with fact checking. That's not happening. That hasn't been happening in any of the comics for years.
It's funny. We were just talking about this with DeMatteis. And the whole reason he's doing the Proto-Goblin element to the story was that Danny, who seems like would be the continuity cop in old school Marvel, right? Mm-hmm. Actually brought it up. He goes, well, there was the Proto-Goblin from that -1 issue from like 97 that was like a prototype of the Green Goblin that Norman did. Oh, hey, I can craft a story with that. DeMatteis never read the story because he didn't write that story. That was actually Howard Mackie. And so he went back and actually read it and had that time to research. So if you got somebody like a Danny that's not just an assistant editor over like these certain sect of books, but actually, you know, doing more, maybe you can have that. Maybe there are people that are in our generation that grew up with this stuff and devoured it that way, that you can do that. But I just don't see that right now, like you say. Certainly not at like the higher level.
No, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. A lot of where people kind of seem like I'm a Debbie Downer on this. But it's, like I said, we'll talk about it more because it goes into it more. This is almost a great place to end for the next episode, because this is the last time we see our May in print so far.
Yes.
And now we'll go on to the digital comics, which may or may not be considered canon. I do believe Next, even if Marvel won't admit to it, that is definitely canon.
That one, we know is canon because of who wrote it.
Exactly.
But so there will be some good, and there will be some there'll be some in the next episode.
We'll talk about it because I'll have a lot to say. But yeah, so yes.
Yeah, I do want to highlight to everybody, please, 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 please write reviews, write emails, write leave voicemails. We would love to do just a feedback episode. I think after we get done with these reviews.
Oh, yes, for sure. We're down, like I said, we're down to the wire. We're going to break up the 2 digital issues, but then that's it.
Yeah. So we're going to have a lot to talk about, obviously, next episode. So Kelly, tell everybody what exactly we're covering.
So we have the unlimited mini comics only. So anyway, let me go back and just read this off. But basically, we are caught up with the print world of 982 in all of their appearances so far. But we're not quite done. We do have unlimited mini comics found only on Marvel Comics Unlimited. I do believe that they are talking about making these comics free. I don't know when that's going to be, though. But
while you're talking about that, I'll look at I've got the email.
Okay, cool. So, but next episode, we will be going into Spider-Verse Unlimited Infinity Comics issues 26 through 29. You'd think, since it's about 2 issues worth, there'll be a short episode, but I promise you it's not going to be, because I have a lot to say. And it's needed, and it's justified. And I promise you it is, because I've been sitting on this. I've been sitting on this for 2 years now?
A year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I do have the press release. So, basically starting March 7th, so it should be available now. If you go to marvel.com/Infinity Comics, you'll be able to start reading hundreds of bingeable Marvel comic stories starring fan favorites, including the X-Men, Spider-Man, Jeff the Land Shark, and many more. With an extensive library of 30,000 comics on Marvel Unlimited, you can expect other free Infinity comics to be rotated in throughout the year. So
So
if somebody
might
wants
not be, yeah.
somebody wants to do us a favor, because we're both subscribed to Marvel
Mhm.
Unlimited, so we can already read it. If somebody wants to go in and look to see if these issues are there, let us know, and we'll
Please. Yeah.
so that way
So
people can read it.
otherwise we'll screenshot some pictures so that way it can be more visual aids, but for something you guys can see, since I know that this is kind of paywalled.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Continue
I
with
do
your.
think that the next episode is very much needed. I think it ties in nicely with how this episode ended,
Mhm.
because it ties into a larger problem I've seen not just at Marvel, though Marvel is a huge culprit, which is the lack of research that is going into reviving or rebooting series like as a whole, especially in print. I've been talking about how I feel about the story since the end of 2022, and it's time for us to have a chat about this. I think after going through every issue and diving deep into the story and the lore of World 982 and Mayday Parker for over 3 years now, I'm somewhat invested in this lore, and I do feel like I need to speak out on the story that was put up, literally supposed to be celebrating that lore and celebrating that character and celebrating that storytelling, because
Right.
it's not it. Like a spoiler alert, I'm not happy with it. So please feel free to share the share the word, and we will be back at some point in April to go over that story. And I don't think anyone is going to want to miss it.
No, yeah,
So
certainly don't miss it. Like I mentioned, the feedback is always appreciated. We would love that. Places you can go at Facebook on Spidey Dude Radio or on Spidey Dude Network. That's the same as on Instagram, Twitter at Spidey Dude Radio, and at Make Mine Mayday. If you have not already subscribed on the audio side of things, did you have a comment you want me to throw up? Sorry.
yeah, I actually have two from the professor. So he's
Sure.
bringing up that judging by the track record of the Edge series, May's next appearance will be in winter, which is possible. But also I want to bring up this because maybe I'm not following things, because I have kind of taken a step back in following comic stuff, especially after the death of Miss Marvel, just because I'm sorry. The answer to all of that was incredibly insensitive, and it kind of turned me off of comics for a moment, because I think they need to get their priorities in order. But Professor did say that Madam Web said that May is weak, so she's allowed to be in the next Spider-Verse event, and I don't quite know what that means.
I don't know what that means either. So
Okay,
let
so
us know.
that's not. I'm like, is that not from the mini? The current mini, then?
I haven't read the current. Like again, there's a bunch, since I'm not doing Spider Satellites anymore on Crawl Space. Although I am wearing my Crawl Space shirt today, ironically enough. I haven't been paying attention as much as I used to. Outside of the Miles stuff and outside of stuff I want to read, Spidey. Explain it. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. So the professor basically states that in the most recent Edge of series, Julia shows up and says, "Hey, some guys are hunting some important spiders." So she's recruiting ones people don't care about, like May, to fight stealthily. So we'll see. To me, it's like, look, she's got her dad back. Like, she just needs to tell him to shut up and go away.
I just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone.
But yeah. So with that, all right. So with that, let's go ahead and close out the show. And guys, since we kind of wound up recording a little bit differently, I do know that the Crawl Space is live recording their main show. So why don't you hop on over and just say Make Mine Mayday sent you guys, and check that out, because that should be a fun time.
Absolutely. So thanks to those guys, of course, as always, we really do appreciate it. And of course, as we wrap up this show, like I was mentioning earlier, I mentioned all those things at the top. I do want to mention our patrons over at patreon.com/Spidey Network. We'll start off with our VIPs, Scott McGraw, Sebastian, and Venkman. Thank you for your support as our top tier patrons. And then we have Sarah, who is a member of the Crawl Space. Thank you to her for being our lone spectacular patron. Our friendly neighborhood patrons you see up on the screen, I'll add them in the audio only edition. But the sensational tier patrons, we have Allison, Cindy, Ed, Georgia, Greg, Janelle, Jessica, Jurgen, Catherine, Kale, Laura Howard, Lump Moose, Master Drammond, Phoenician, Scott, Vanessa, and Vicky. Thank you guys for your support on patreon.com/Spidey Network. Stuff you get on Patreon. You get fun commentaries. You also get the Books of X podcast, which is the Patreon first show covering the Krakoan era of X-Men, which is about to end very, very soon. So we have a very set time frame. Check out our brother show over on the Spidey Dude Experience, where we just covered the Spectacular Spider-Men. We have the Ultimate Spidey Dude Experience. We have the Slot Symposium, as well as our regular ASM reviews. We also got our great interviews like Talking Spectacular Spider-Man with Greg Weisman and JMD Mateus talking about the Shadow of the Green Goblin. Speaking of Greg Weisman, you can always check out the Voices from the Eerie podcast, the show all about the gargoyles, as well as the comic books, as well as the animated series. We got ASM Classics over that is audio only on spidey-u.com. Clone Saga Chronicles and Spectacular Radio are the shows that started it all, and the Sabi Sim Era podcast, which also has the Web of Music podcast that's available over on spidey-dude.com. So again, thank you for watching. If you're watching us live on YouTube, if you're a part of it, thank you for all our live comments. Thank you for the super chat, Venkman. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for listening if you're listening to the audio edition. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of it, and we'll see you next time here on Make Mine Mayday.